and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by a man who needs absolutely no introduction. But for those who may be meeting you for the first time, who are you and what are you doing here?
Hi, I am Aiden Grant, and I drove here in my car and we are recording a podcast. That's what I'm doing here, yeah?
Excellent. Yes, we are recording a podcast. More specifically, we're talking about your creative journey, Aiden. So tell me a little bit about your creative journey.
Right. Okay. So I've always been a creative person, and that's come through in different ways. So I first left high school and did graphic design and got very frustrated with clients. That was not for me. I hated the fact that I would do something that was amazing and perfect, and then they went, but can we have it in blue? No, it doesn't go in blue. What are you talking about?
Can we make the logo bigger?
Yeah. So that frustrated me. And I always had a passion for music and radio, and I kind of lent more into that way of things. While I was at uni, I volunteered at a radio station and eventually made my way on air, eventually got into the radio industry, just kept pushing. And that was sort of where I ended up going. And graphic design sort of helped me along the way as well, because it's just another, what's the saying, quiver in the bow or bow in the quiver, or
I don't know, you're telling the story.
Edit that, fix that up. Make me sound good with that.
We're keeping that in.
So yeah, I've kept graphic design going, and I occasionally do a little things here and there, but yeah, it's radio and podcasting is now the focus for me.
Yeah. Well, what initially made you want to do graphic design?
Oh, I loved cartoons. As a kid, I was obsessed with cartoons, and probably, sadly, my wife would say too much as an adult still. But yeah, I loved cartoons, loved drawing, loved designing different things and coming out with creative solutions for problems, which is essentially what graphic design is. It's coming out with a creative way to display something. So I really liked that. And I still do. Like I still really love like just seeing a billboard or a advertisement and go, oh, I really like how they did that or this. But yeah, clients, man, the worst.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying there.
But you love all your clients.
Absolutely.
You were telling me off air, you're like, you love them all equally and appreciate all of them.
Yeah, they love my work. There's never notes or anything like that.
Because you're amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I received that. I appreciate that. But with your graphic design as well, has that really translated well over to your podcasting career?
Well, in real basic type terms, as far as like, you know, you flick through iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're looking for a podcast and go like, oh, I like the look of that one. You know, the old saying of you can't judge a book by its cover. That is literally what you do with podcasting. You look at the thumbnail and go, I'm going to try that one because the lettering looks cool. So
this looks like a podcast for me.
Yeah, like just little things like that. So in a real practical way, yes, I do use it from time to time to design little things here and there for sure. And I guess it comes down to those principles that you learn at uni through whether it be media of some type, like, you know, the rule of thirds or, you know, like the different design elements, you know, all those things play into other areas of your life as well. So yes, it's justified my HECS debt that I still have.
Right. I was going to say, do you regret going to higher education?
Great question. I've gone back and forth on this several times because I made it to a fairly high point in radio. I would say, I'm not meaning to brag, but this is what we're doing. We're having a conversation about life. So I was at a point where I was getting flown around the country to, you know, go to different gigs. I was flown to meet Taylor Swift, and her mum took me on a tour around the backstage, and we had dinner and stuff. Like, so I got to the top of radio, or at least to where I was ever going to get. So I often do think, if I didn't go to uni, would I have got to that peak a bit quicker? We'll never know. So right. I don't regret going to uni, no, but I do think I would love to not have that debt. I would love to, you know, who knows?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. So tell me about today. What are you doing today?
Yeah, so I do a drive radio show day to day, like Monday to Friday, 3 or 6, Aiden in the Arvo. Listen. Which camera do I point? And then I do a podcast separate to that, but it does also get played on the radio station. But that's sort of my baby, called Songs That Change You. And that's the third or fourth podcast I've done over the years, but this is the current one that I'm doing and very passionate about.
Yeah, we'll unpack that maybe in a future episode into more detail. But if you want to share about your podcast right now.
Yeah, so it's a interview-based podcast where I sit down with a guest and discuss a song that has had an impact on their life and their journey in faith. So it's a Christian podcast where we drill down on a moment in time when they've heard a song and it's really impacted them. And, people can open up around music. People are often really passionate about music, but it also unlocks memories. And so that's kind of where the podcast sits, in this beautiful zone of people letting down their guard because they're chatting about a song and these memories and getting nostalgic. And I pounce on their nostalgia and open the door for a good conversation, essentially.
Yeah, I've listened to, I think, every podcast episode of Songs That Change You, and they can get quite emotional. There's been sometimes, I typically consume podcasts in the car, and there have been a few times where my eyes have gotten a little watery listening to
dust in the car.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I need to clean my car a bit more, but yeah, it's odd. Every time I listen, well, not every time, but some of the times that I listen to your podcast, they really do hit an emotional part in my heart.
Well, that's nice. There was an old saying in radio, tears get ticks. So if you could get somebody to cry on the air, it would get a tick in the survey book. People would be listening going, oh, I remember that beautiful moment. Yeah, oh, that's right. I was listening to that radio show. I'll tick that in the old survey book. So that's always in the back of my mind. If I can get somebody to cry, I know I'm doing my job right.
Yeah. And going on from the podcast, you're also doing radio right now. Tell me about how you got into radio. You mentioned before it's quite difficult. What doors did you have to break down to get to where you got to and where you currently are?
Yeah, so radio is cutthroat. It is savage. It's essentially that game that you would play at parties as a kid. What's the musical chairs? And they're just slowly removing chairs, but everyone wants to sit down, but there's not enough chairs for everyone. So everyone's doing whatever they can to push people out of the way. And so on one hand, I didn't love that commercial radio feel of constantly fearing that somebody's going to steal my job. But I am a competitive person. So it played to, swings and roundabouts. But yeah, I just pushed. I pushed and pushed and pushed to get my way in. As I said, I volunteered for maybe a year, just doing a Monday night radio show on this community station for free each Monday night. And I just took it really seriously. I was like, this is my ticket to a real job, and I'm gonna do the best I can. And I would record every show that I did. And then I just went online and found people's emails, and I found radio bosses' emails, and I would send them my show and go, what do you think of my show this week? And I would just send them. And I never met them, never knew any of these people. And eventually they wrote back, and eventually there was job offers. And then I, eventually picked the right one and got into radio. And, the first station I was at was in Muswellbrook, New South Wales, 2,000 people. And I was the daytime announcer.
You got 2,000 people listening to your radio show?
2,000 people lived in the town.
Right.
Generous to think that all of them were listening to my show. But yeah, I was the daytime announcer. The breakfast girl went on holidays. I think I'd been at the station for maybe like 2 weeks, maybe a month at most. She went on holidays and I filled in on the breakfast show just while she was away. And when she came back, the boss said, I think we might keep Aiden on the breakfast show and you can go to days. And
cutthroat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from there, I got a different breakfast radio show at a bigger market. And then I got a drive show at another bigger market.
And these bigger markets, every time you go to this bigger market, that is a literal location change for you.
Yeah.
So talk me through those. Like, how big of a distance are these location changes?
Yeah. So
people at home that don't know.
Sure. So I grew up in Geelong and moved to Muswellbrook. And that was, I don't know, like another state. Yeah, that was in New South Wales. So, and then I got a job in Ballarat. So that's a town of like 90,000. So I went from 2,000 town to 90,000, and that was doing breakfast radio. And then I went back to Geelong, which was a dream come true. Like they poached me and approached me and said like, hey, we'd love to have you on our drive show.
They made you an offer you couldn't refuse.
Exactly. And that was 350,000. So, each time it's quite big steps up. And then from there, I went to Adelaide, which is 1.1 million, roughly, give or take, depending on who's telling the story. I think Victorians would probably say there's only about 2 people in Adelaide, and Adelaide people would
say
a
lot of churches.
Yeah. And Adelaide people would say, oh, it's big, it's huge. We're a real city. Sure you are. So yeah, that was my biggest market, Adelaide. And I worked on a few different radio stations in Adelaide, because after a few years, they worked out that a computer could do my job and I got made redundant. So I went to a few different radio stations. And yeah.
So what exactly were you doing in Adelaide for people that don't know your role?
Yeah, so I was the music director in Adelaide at SAFM/Hit 107. They like to change their name every second week. A music director picks and programs all the music that goes to where. So record labels would take me out for lunch and they would say, hey, here's a whole lot of CDs, or here's a whole lot of new artists that you should check out. How about we go see their band tonight and we'll shout you a steak dinner.
Schmoozing.
And what do you reckon? You'll play that one on the radio tomorrow? And I loved it, discovering new artists, having that small moment of power of going like, yes, I will be the first commercial station in Australia to play Amy Shark. Little moments like that where I was like, this is exciting, this is fun. But it didn't last.
Have you got any cool stories of being taken out and being schmoozed by these record producers?
So my favorite thing each year was to go to the ARIA Awards. I would get invited at least 3 or 4 years in a row. I got invited to the ARIAs, got to walk the red carpet, go to the event, and that was amazing. And so I would get flown up to Sydney to the Crown Plaza, I think it is, where they would hold the ARIAs. For those that don't know, that's the music industry's awards night here in Australia. I would arrive at a hotel room. I would go into my hotel room and there would be a variety of bribes essentially on the bed, depending on which label had flown me up. That would be what they were pushing, which artist they were pushing, sort of thing.
So can you be a bit more specific on these bribes? So these bribes are products, correct?
Yeah. It would just be like their latest vinyl, or like a Bluetooth speaker with their music already programmed on it for you, and different things like that. And yeah, then I would go to the awards ceremony and get invited to these amazing parties, and at 3 a.m. in the morning be sitting with Molly Meldrum discussing music. Or there was one year, Dickie from the Today Show.
Look, if you show me a picture.
The guy with the gross hair, him and I were wearing the exact same suit. So we were like sitting there just chatting about that, and fun little parties and moments that I got to be a part of was really amazing. Like, it was just incredible. And now I watch the ARIAs and go, remember that time I went there, that sort of thing. But that's a long time ago now. When I was a music director, there was a music director in every market. So there was one in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, and minor places as well, like your Geelongs and Ballarats and different places around the country. Now there might be 1 or 2 for a whole network. So one person's programming the music for 36 stations.
And how are they able to justify that? Is it just with technology and all that advancing?
Yeah, so some of it's technology and some of it's just like lack of care. So technology, yes, allows them to send out playlists around and program it into the radio stations and stuff. But when there were individual market music directors, you would do research and go, oh, these songs work really well in this market. For instance, when I was in Adelaide, Hilltop Hoods rated through the roof because they were from Adelaide, but never rated in Melbourne or Sydney. Like, just couldn't get any love from listeners. So when I got made redundant in Adelaide, the music director dropped all stuff because she was programming for all the stations now, and Hilltop Hoods got ditched because there was no individuality for each station around the network. So you lose, they save a wage, but they lose this part of what makes the station special.
Yeah, that's disappointing to hear. And also, looking back on your radio career, do you have an appreciation of starting out small and then progressing, or do you wish you were at the big major city network right from the beginning? Do you think having that longer journey was good for your character development, or do you have another take on that?
Look, you can look at it from both ways. I do love the idea of being a big fish in a small pond. So I've actually enjoyed the high heights and then coming down from that. And it's actually, I've got all this knowledge. I know what I'm doing at these smaller stations that I can really help. And also, like, I'm really proud of the fact that I've worked really hard to get where I got to. You got to really know a lot in any industry, really. If the more you can know, the more you can offer to a radio station. So because I worked at these small little stations where you had to do everything, you had to, you also had to clean the bathrooms on a Friday before the weekend and different things like that. I wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty at other stations and get jobs done. And like, oh, you don't know how to do that? I'll do that. Bosses love that stuff. So because I knew everything from the, 3 or 4 years of working in these small little markets, it really helped in the long run. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
And today, I believe you have your face on a bus.
Yeah. After 15 years of working in radio, I finally have my face on a bus. It was
Pretty
a very
sure that's
proud
on your
moment.
Bucket list, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There was so many stations I worked at that I just didn't quite make the bus. Like the breakfast show was on the bus, but I was on the drive show. Or they didn't have the budget for the bus for the 6 months that I was on breakfast, and then I moved on, and then the next show got the bus and whatever. So yes, a proud moment was when I got to get my face on a bus. Yeah, it's pretty surreal seeing your face on a bus.
Is
amazing.
it awkward?
No, I loved it.
Of course.
I have an ego.
Yeah, fair enough. And to wrap up today's episode, Aiden, do you have any words of wisdom for the audience that might be listening right now?
Yeah, so I think this goes for any field, whether it be radio, but I do think in creative industries in general, don't let no stop you. Push, work hard to get where you want to go and find another avenue. So there were many times when there wasn't a job going at a radio station, but I would just send them stuff. I was like, I think I'm good and I think you want me and I think I could be awesome for your radio station. Here's some demos. Here's some stuff. And going back to the graphic design, I designed a life-size cutout of myself holding my resume and sent it to a radio station and had it delivered to their reception. And that got a phone call pretty quickly from the boss going like, who are you? What's going on?
You got their attention.
Yeah. And there was other times where I designed like a Milo tin, but it said Aiden on it and had my resume on the back. And, like that old food pyramid, I had like, these are the skills I have to offer. And, I sent that off and I made maybe 30 of those and sent them to all the stations that I'd be happy to work at and move around the country to. And again, got lots of phone calls. And I had my USB with my work inside. I said, check inside for my work. So I kind of think you got to push and you got to work hard just to get noticed. Nobody's going to help you out. Nobody's going to give you the opportunity that you want. It's not going to get handed to you on a platter. You've got to go out and get it for yourself. So that's my advice. Get what you want. Work hard and push.
Excellent. Well, Aiden, thank you for joining us on the Your Story Studios podcast.
Thank you for having me.